Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Renegade Operative here, and welcome back to yet another gaming review. I've been meaning to cover this title for a long time because I was very hesitant on picking it up initially after hearing a lot of rave criticism that slammed this title into the ground. I eventually decided to get over these skeptical concerns at an offer I couldn't refuse with $4 of said exclusive. Sony Santa Monica was placing up discounts on PSN, and the Order 1886 was among the slew of discounts. I fully completed this title from start to finish, and here's my review of the Order 1886. The Order 1886 is a third-person action-adventure title created in tandem between Ready at Dawn as a primary team and Sony Santa Monica Studios, the creators behind God of War. If you peer into Ready at Dawn's resume before the Order 1886, you'll realize that mostly they produce PlayStation portable titles, and their biggest work is arguably God of War Ghosts of Sparta. This is their first attempt at any form of a major AAA console exclusive, and it really starts to show once you think outside the box. However, as we start to get into more of the negatives of the Order 1886 and its various shortcomings, let's talk about the positive aspects first with the graphics. The graphics of the Order 1886 are quite simply phenomenal. The RAD 4.0 engine really flexes in stride on the PlayStation 4 with very realistic character models, expertly crafted textures, and a vast array of detail that's been put into the particle effects when you're using some of the various specialized weapons in the game. There's just something supremely satisfying when you're shooting an arc cannon, which emits a pulse of lightning, or the 3-crown coat shotgun, which has sparks fly off while enemies are vaporized to your sadistic heart's content. It runs at a stable 30 FPS, and I've barely seen any hitches or nuances that distracted me from the overall eye candy. If I had two complaints here, I would say, despite environments being heavily detailed, there's a slight drawback with the color palette. The color palette could have been more lush and refined, since the game had black and gray colors that seeped into the scenery in certain spots, especially during the town sections. I felt the letterboxing didn't serve any significant purpose either, other than making the game look cinematic, which is cool, but I would have preferred the option to turn that off just to see the rest of the screen in full detail. The gameplay is a bit of a mixed bag. While the Order 1886 does have great qualities like tight controls and satisfying moments of gunplay, there's wrinkles of issues that tend to persist as you delve deeper into the experience. This is mostly a cover-based third-person shooter, so you'll spend a lot of time mowing down various madmen that populate certain areas with either grenades, shotguns, machine guns, or special variants like flamethrowers, RPGs, and lightning cannons. Once again, the gameplay is super satisfying, especially the realistic kill animations and one-button melees to punch enemies into oblivion. This is always a sight to see before it gets repetitive.
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
When the pressure was on, and there will be those situations where that occurs, you can use the black sight mechanic to slow down time and go John Woo style, pulling off some fancy trick shots that can clear areas if you have enough meter. I did enjoy the fact that the game felt challenging on hard difficulty with no aim assist present. I thought it was the ultimate third-person shooter experience because the player does have the ability to turn the aim assist right off if they please. The problems also poured in rapidly when it came to noticing how simple things like the over-the-shoulder camera was zoomed in way too close to Galahad. The design of this mechanic pretty much got me killed in so many differing degrees because it's like, if I can't adjust the FOV, how will I see an enemy flanking me to the side? How will I see enemies flanking me off screen? You can only switch your shoulders and cover, which makes no sense that you can't do it manually when you're trying to get a bead on someone. So you can't switch shoulders from right to left and vice versa. This pretty much means that you're screwed if you get flanked off screen. So it seems like Ready at Dawn just pretty much forgot about basic fundamentals of third-person shooters. This stuff is pretty much valuable to your core shooter, and it seems like you forgot it as an afterthought. I also found the stealth sections just to be annoying in some aspects because before you get the bow and arrow, Galahad has to perfectly sneak up behind enemies to kill them. Sounds simple, right? But it seems like killing them from the side or the front is not a valid option. You can't switch shoulders and you can't utilize any freedom with the camera, so it gets harder to see enemies. And then if you don't see the enemies and they see you, there's no alert, there's no escape. You just get one-shotted. That's it. You get one-shotted for not seeing someone that's clearly like 5 feet away from you. And the worst thing about that is making some sort of stealth segment and not giving the player control of the camera is the worst thing that you could possibly do. Now, we are going to veer off course just for a little bit, and we're going to talk about the Lycan fights. The entire segments of Lycan fights are lazy in general. You shoot them, you do a quick time event, is finished. You do a quick time event, you hurt them enough, quick time event again, is finished. Even the reveal of the vampires later in the plot is mega squandered for these quick time moments, which felt very wasted. It felt like wasted potential in differing areas. At times, I wish I just could have saw more of these deranged monsters like the vampires and the Lycans go at the player in gameplay. Or imagine a 3-round threat. Vampires versus werewolves versus you, the player, the humans. That would be phenomenal. I remember when The Last of Us Left Behind did something like this, where there was a segment where it was you, Ellie, versus the hunters versus the clickers, the clicking type zombies that are in The Last of Us Left Behind. And that really was awesome. It was an interesting dynamic of a 3-way faction fighting against one another. That's not too much for me to ask for as a fan of stuff like Van Helsing, as a fan of things that are set in the Victorian era, as a fan of werewolves and vampires. They didn't have much that they could have brought to the table here, and that's kind of disappointing because the setting is very good. The gameplay was also good, so you're stuck wondering what exactly happened and why was potential wasted. Now, let's talk about QuickTime events. There are a wealth of them in the Order 1886 that doesn't change or vary the buttons with each new restart. So remember Resident Evil 4, remember where Capcom switched the buttons around to keep you on edge just in case you screwed things up again? This game isn't as bold or impulsive enough to toy with the player's muscle memory for those aforementioned changes, so it doesn't do anything with them or leave any impact in terms of QuickTime events. After you've seen all the QuickTime events in the game, and after you've seen all the cool death animations, the novelty just wears off like anything else. As for the story, basically you are Sir Galahad, one of the Knights of the Round Table who helps to maintain order around London. London hasn't seen its most peaceful days with a string of Lycan outbreaks, a serial killer who stalks around Whitechapel under the alias Jack the Ripper, and a local anti-government establishment known as the Rebels. The Rebels have their own hidden agendas, and you fight against them more as you uncover more of the story. You are usually accompanied by a crew of teammates, mainly Percival, Lafayette, and Lady in Green, each with their own unique personality traits and banter among them. As we progress even further, we find out that Whitechapel, as usual, is held in a handbasket, and there's plenty of backstory regulating around the events of this area and why it's cordoned off by the Order later in the story. However, Galahad eventually starts to seek retribution and demand answers after the death of his mentor, Percival, on the flying airship. This eventually leads Galahad to work with the rebel leader as the conspiracy is revealed that the United India Company, a respected front amongst the Order, is actually using their influence to benefit others and is actually shipping out vampire beings in mass cargo within a warehouse. Galahad and the leader of the rebels eventually destroy all this cargo, but not long before discovering that Lord Hastings himself is a vampire and Lucian is a half-breed. A few in medias res moments later, and we wind up with Galahad escaping capture and confronting Lucian, and ultimately killing Lucian. But not long before it was revealed that the Lord Chancellor of the Order was protecting Lucian as a half-breed because Lucian was his adopted son and that this information could not be revealed to the public because that would shake the very core of the Order, so Galahad pleads to an oath of silence before he puts a bullet in Lucian. Now, this game does have convincing and very decent acting among the storytelling, so it's pretty convincing. I really have to commend the actors for doing a decent job here. However, when it comes to the plot itself, it seems as though they play it very straightforward. This is a very straightforward story. It isn't overly convoluted. It plays it safe, but that seems to be the problem. The story doesn't leave many interesting facets or many twists behind when the game finally closes, and you're stuck wanting more answers about what will happen to the Order, what will happen due to the fact that they keep all these secrets like this, like what is going to happen to Galahad's findings, what is going to happen to Galahad himself, considering that he's not a knight anymore, but he worked with the rebels. Is he going to turn rebel? Who knows? We don't know because the post-credits don't tell much. The Order 1886 is a game with riveting third-person gunplay, marred by unacceptable issues that really shows the game needed something extra and it needed more refinement to its core design to be top-of-the-line quality. The Ready at Dawn team were even influenced by the spectacular Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, so I don't see why they didn't get more advice from Naughty Dog themselves about the nature of a third-person shooter and what clicked so well. A lot of problems in this game that makes the cookie crumble seems to be mere afterthoughts of basic things like shoulder swapping, field of vision problems, and spotty stealth segments. If you can get through that, however, there is decent gameplay and a straightforward story, but it leaves a lot to be desired, especially when we get to the section of replay value. This game is only 5 to 8 hours, and the extras are, well, quite frankly, more dead than a keg at a frat party. If you're a fan of third-person shooters, then the Order 1886 is certainly either a rent or a bargain bin buy at best. But in the long run, there's a lot of flash, but certainly no substance. And it's absolutely criminal to get this game at more than $20, which I can't recommend at all. This game has a lot of great aspects, like the Victorian style setting, the fantasy creatures, and refinements could be made if there ever was a sequel, but as it stands now, I have to give the Order 1886 a C-.